Let me tell you that you are choosing the worst way to attain your object. You think that by buying up all the best books you can lay your hands on, you will pass for a man of literary tastes? Not a bit of it. You are merely exposing thereby your own ignorance of literature. Why, you cannot even buy the right things. Any casual recommendation is enough to guide your choice. You are as clay in the hands of the unscrupulous amateur, and as good as cash down to any dealer. How are you to know the difference between genuine old books that are worth money and trash, whose only merit is that it is falling to pieces? You are reduced to taking the worms and moths into your confidence. Their activity is your sole clue to the value of a book. As to the accuracy and fidelity of the copyist, that is quite beyond you. And supposing even that you had managed to pick out some veritable treasures, as the exquisite editions of Callinus, or those of the far-famed Atticus, most conscientious of publishers, what does it profit you? Their beauty means nothing to you, my poor friend. You will get precisely as much enjoyment out of them as a blind lover would derive from the possession of a handsome mistress. Your eyes, to be sure, are open. You do see your books, goodness knows, see them till you must be sick of the sight. You even read a bit here and there, in a scrambling fashion, your lips still busy with one sentence while your eyes are on the next. But what is the use of that? You cannot tell good from bad. You miss the writer's general drift. You miss his subtle arrangements of words, the chaste elegance of pure style, the false ring of the counterfeit. 'Tis all one to you. Are we to understand that you possess literary discernment without the assistance of any study? And how should that be? Perhaps, like Hesiod, you received a laurel branch from the Muses. As to that, I doubt whether you have so much as heard of Helicon, the reputed haunt of those goddesses. Your youthful pursuits were not those of a Hesiod. Take not the Muses' names in vain. They might not have any scruples about appearing to a hardy, hairy, sunburnt shepherd, but as for coming near such a one as you will excuse my particularizing further just now when I appeal to you in the name of the goddess of Lebanon. They would scorn the thought. Instead of laurel, you would have a tamarisk and mallow leaves about your back. The waters of Ulmium and Hippocrene are for thirsty sheep and stainless shepherds. They must not be polluted by unclean lips. I grant you a very creditable stock of effrontery, but you will scarcely have the assurance to call yourself an educated man. You will scarcely pretend that your acquaintance with literature is more than skin deep, or give us the names of your teacher and your fellow students. No, you think you are going to work off all arrears by the simple expedient of buying a number of books, but there again, you may get together the works of Demosthenes and his 8 beautiful copies of Thucydides, all in the orator's own handwriting, and all the manuscripts that Sulla sent away from Athens to Italy, and you will be no nearer to culture at the end of it, though you should sleep with them under your pillow, or paste them together and wear them as a garment. An ape is still an ape, says the proverb, though his trappings be of gold. So it is with you. You have always a book in your hand. You are always reading, but what is it all about? You have not an idea. You do but prick up asinine ears at the lyre's sound. Books would be precious things indeed if the mere possession of them guaranteed culture to their owner. You rich men would have it all your own way then. We paupers could not stand against you if learning were a marketable commodity. And as for the dealers, no one would presume to contest the point of culture with men who have whole shopfuls of books at their disposal. However, you will find on examination that these privileged persons are scarcely less ignorant than yourself. They have just your vile accent, and are as deficient in intelligence as one would expect to be who have never learned to distinguish good from bad. Now you see, you have merely bought a few odd volumes from them. They are at the fountainhead and are handling books day and night. Judge from this how much good your purchases are likely to do you, unless you think that your very bookcases acquire a tincture of learning from the bare fact of their housing so many ancient manuscripts. Oblige me by answering some questions, or rather, as circumstances will not admit of your answering, just nod or shake your head. If the flute of Timotheus, or that of Ismenias, which its owner sold in Corinth for a couple of £1,000, were to fall into the hands of a person who did not know how to play the instrument, would that make him a flute player? Would his acquisition leave him any wiser than it found him? You very properly shake your head. A man might possess the instrument of a Marsyas or an Olympus, and still he would not be able to play it if he had never learnt. Take another case. A man gets a hold of Hercules' bow and arrows, but he is no Philoctetes. He has neither that marksman's strength nor his eye. What do you say? Will he acquit himself creditably? Again you shake your head. The same will be the case with the ignorant pilot who is entrusted with a ship, or with an unpractised rider on horseback. Nothing is wanting to the beauty and efficiency of the vessel, and the horse may be a Median, or a Thessalian, or a Coppa, yet I take it that the incompetence of their respective owners will be made clear, am I right? And now let me ask your assent to one more proposition. If an illiterate person like yourself goes in for buying books, he is thereby laying himself open to ridicule. You hesitate? Yet surely nothing could be clearer. Who could observe such a man at work and abstain from the inevitable allusion to pearls and swine? There was a wealthy man in Asia, not many years ago, who was so unfortunate as to lose both his feet. I think he had been traveling through snowdrifts and had gotten them frostbitten. Well, of course, it was a very hard case, and in ordering a pair of wooden feet, by means of which he contrived to get along with the assistance of servants, he was no doubt only making the best of a bad job. But the absurd thing was that he would always make a point of having the smartest and newest shoes to set off his stumps. Feet, I mean. Now, are you any wiser than he? When, for the adornment of that hobbling wooden understanding of yours, you go to the expense of such golden shoes as would tax the agility of a sound-limbed intellect. Among your other purchases are several copies of Homer. Get someone to turn up the second book of the Iliad and read to you. There is only one part you need trouble about. The rest does not apply to your case. I refer to the harangue of a certain ludicrous, maimed, distorted creature called Thersites. Now, imagine this Thersites, such as he is there depicted to have clothed himself in the armor of Achilles. What will be the result? Will he be converted there, and then into a stalwart, comely warrior, clearing the river at a bound, and staining its waters with Phrygian blood? Will he prove a slayer of Asteropaeus, and Lycaons, and finally of Hector's, he who cannot so much as bear Achilles' spear upon his shoulders? Of course not. He will simply be ridiculous. The weight of the shield will cause him to stagger, and will presently bring him onto his nose beneath the helmet. As often as he looks up will be seen that squint. The Achillean greaves will be a sad drag to his progress, and the rise and fall of the breastplate will tell a tale of a humped back. In short, neither the armorer nor the owner of the arms will have much to boast of. You are just like Thersites, if only you could see it, when you take in hand your fine volume, purple-cased, gilt-bossed, and begin reading with that accent of yours, maiming and murdering its contents. You make yourself ridiculous to all educated men. Your own toadies commend you, but they generally get in a chuckle too, as they catch one another's eye. Let me tell you a story of what happened once at Delphi. A native of Tarentum, Evangelos by name, a person of some note in his own city, conceived the ambition of winning a prize in the Pythian games. Well, he saw at once that the athletic contests were quite out of the question. He had neither the strength nor the agility required. A musical victory, on the other hand, would be an easy matter. So at least he was persuaded by his vile parasites, who used to burst into a roar of applause the moment he touched the strings of his lyre. He arrived at Delphi in great style. Among other things, he had provided himself with gold-bespangled garments and a beautiful golden laurel wreath, with full-size emerald berries. As for his lyre, that was a most gorgeous and costly affair, solid gold throughout, and ornamented with all kinds of gems, and with figures of Apollo and Orpheus and the Muses, a wonder to all beholders. The eventful day at length arrived. There were 3 competitors, of whom Evangelos was to come second. Thespis the Theban performed first, and acquitted himself creditably. And then Evangelos appeared, resplendent in gold and emeralds, beryls and jacinths, the effect being heightened by his purple robe, which made a background to the gold. The house was all excitement and wondering anticipation, as singing and playing were an essential part of the competition. Evangelos now struck up with a few meaningless, disconnected notes, assaulting his lyre with such needless violence that he broke 3 strings at the start, and when he began to sing with his discordant pipe of a voice, the whole audience was convulsed with laughter, and the stewards, enraged at his presumption, scourged him out of the theatre. Our golden Evangelos now presented a very queer spectacle, as the floggers drove him across the stage, weeping and bloody-limbed, and stooping to pick up the gems that had fallen from the lyre, for that instrument had come in for its share of the castigation. His place was presently taken by one Eumelus of Elis. His lyre was an old one with wooden pegs, and his clothes and crown would scarcely have fetched 10 shillings between them. But for all that, his well-managed voice and admirable execution caused him to be proclaimed the victor, and he was very merry over the unavailing splendors of his rival's gem-studded instrument. Evangelos, he is reported to have said to him, "Yours is the golden laurel. You can afford it. I am a pauper, and must put up with the Delphian wreath. No one will be sorry for your defeat. Your arrogance and incompetence have made you an object of detestation. This is all your equipment has done for you." Here again, the application is obvious. Evangelos differing from you only in his sensibility to public ridicule. I have also an old lesbian story, which is very much to the point. It is said that after Orpheus had been torn to pieces by the Thracian women, his head and his lyre were carried down the Hebrus into the sea. The head, it seems, floated down upon the lyre, singing Orpheus's dirge as it went. while the winds blew an accompaniment upon the strings. In this manner they reached the coast of Lesbos. The head was then taken up and buried on the site of the present temple of Bacchus, and the lyre was long preserved as a relic in the temple of Apollo. Later on, however, Neanthus, son of the tyrant Pittacus, hearing how the lyre had charmed beasts and trees and stones, and how after Orpheus's destruction it had played of its own accord, conceived a violent fancy for the instrument, and by means of a considerable bribe prevailed upon the priest to give him the genuine lyre and replace it with one of similar appearance. Not thinking it advisable to display his acquisition in the city in broad daylight, he waited till night, and then, putting it under his cloak, walked off into the outskirts. And there this youth, who had not a note of music in him, produced his instrument and began jangling on the strings, expecting such divine strains to issue therefrom as would subdue all souls and prove him the fortunate heir to Orpheus's power. He went on till a number of dogs collected at the sound and tore him limb from limb. Thus far, at least, his fate resembled that of Orpheus, though his power of attraction extended only to hostile dogs. It was abundantly proved that the charm lay not in the lyre, but solely in those peculiar gifts of song and music that had been bestowed upon Orpheus by his mother. As to the lyre, it was just like other lyres. But there, what need to go back to Orpheus and Neanthus? We have instances in our own days. I believe the man is still alive, who paid £120 for the earthenware lamp of Epictetus the Stoic. I suppose he thought he had only to read by the light of that lamp, and the wisdom of Epictetus would be communicated to him in his dreams, and he himself assumed the likeness of that venerable sage. And it was only a day or two ago that another enthusiast paid down £250 for the staff dropped by the cynic Proteus when he leaped upon the pyre. He treasures this relic and shows it off just as the people of Tegea do the hide of the Caledonian boar, or the Thebans the bones of Geryon, or the Memphisians Isis's hair. Now, the original owner of this precious staff was one who for ignorance and vulgarity would have borne away the palm from yourself. My friend, you are in a bad way. A stick across the head is what you want. They say that when Dionysius took to tragedy writing, he made such sad stuff of it that Philoxenus was more than once thrown into the quarries because he could not control his laughter. Finding that his efforts only made him ridiculous, Dionysius was at some pains to procure the tablets on which Aeschylus had been wont to write. He looked to draw divine inspiration from them. As it turned out, however, he now wrote considerably worse rubbish than before. Among the contents of the tablets I may quote, "'Twas Dionysius's wife Doridion. Here is another, most serviceable woman, thou art gone." Genuine tablet that, and the next, "Men that are fools are their own folly's butt." Taken with reference to yourself, by the way, nothing could be more to the point than this last line. Dionysius's tablets deserved gilding, if only for that. What is your idea now in all this rolling and unrolling of scrolls? To what end the gluing and the trimming, the cedar oil and saffron, the leather cases and the bosses? Much good your purchases have been to you. One sees that already. Why, your language— no, I am wrong there. You are as dumb as a fish. But your life, your unmentionable vices, make everyone hate the sight of you. If that is what books do, one cannot keep too clear of them. There are two ways in which a man may derive benefit from the study of the ancients. He may learn to express himself, or he may improve his morals by their example and warning. When it is clear that he has not profited in either of these respects, what are his books but a habitation for mice and vermin, and a source of castigation to negligent servants? And how very foolish you must look when anyone finds you with a book in your hand, and you are never to be seen without, and asks you, who is your orator, your poet, or your historian? You have seen the title, of course, and you can answer that question pat. But then, one word brings up another, and some criticism, favorable or the reverse, is passed upon the contents of your volume. You are dumb and helpless. You pray for the earth to open and swallow you. You stand like Bellerophon with the warrant for your own execution in your hand. Once in Corinth, Demetrius the Cynic found some illiterate person reading aloud from a very handsome volume, the Bacchae of Euripides, I think it was. He had got to the place where the messenger is relating the destruction of Pentheus by Agave, when Demetrius snatched the book from him and tore it in two. Better, he exclaimed, that Pentheus should suffer one rending at my hands than many at yours. I have often wondered, though I have never been able to satisfy myself, what is it that makes you such an ardent buyer of books? The idea of your making any profitable use of them is one that nobody who has the slightest acquaintance with you would entertain for a moment. Does the bald man buy a comb? The blind a mirror? The deaf a flute player? The eunuch a concubine? The landsman an oar? The pilot a plough? Are you merely seizing an opportunity of displaying your wealth? Is it just your way of showing the public that you can afford to spend money even on things that are of no use to you? Why, even a Syrian, like myself, knows that if you had not got your name foisted into that old man's will, you would have been starving by this time, and all your books must have been put up to sale. Only one possible explanation remains. Your toadies have made you believe that in addition to your charms of person, you have an extraordinary gift for rhetoric, history, and philosophy, and you buy books merely to countenance their flatteries. It seems that you actually hold forth to them at table, and they, poor thirsty frogs, must croak dry-throated applause till they burst, or there is no drink for them. You are a most curiously gullible person. You take in every word they say to you. You were made to believe at one time that your features resembled those of a certain emperor. We had had a pseudo-Alexander and a pseudo-Philip, the Fuller, and there was a pseudo-Nero as recently as our own grandfather's times. You were adding one more to the noble army of pseudos. After all, it was nothing for an illiterate fool like you to take such a fancy into his head and walk about with his chin in the air, aping the gait and dress and expression of this supposed model. Even the Epirot, King Pyrrhus, remarkable man that he was in other respects, had the same foible, and was persuaded by his flatterers that he was like Alexander the Great, that is. In point of fact, I have seen Pyrrhus's portrait, and the two, to borrow a musical phrase, are about as much like one another as bass and treble, and yet he was convinced he was the image of Alexander. However, if that were all, it would be rather too bad of me to insult Pyrrhus by the comparison, but I am justified by the sequel. It suits your case so exactly. When once Pyrrhus had got this fancy into his head, everyone else ran mad for company, till at last an old woman of Larissa, who did not know Pyrrhus, told him the plain truth, and cured his delusion. After showing her portraits of Philip, Perdiccas, Alexander, Cassander, and other kings, Pyrrhus finally asked her which of these he resembled, taking it as a matter of course that she would fix upon Alexander. However, she considered for some time, and at length informed him that he was most like Batrachian the cook, there being a cook of that name in Larissa who was very like Pyrrhus. What particular theatrical pander you most resemble I will not pretend to decide. All I can state with certainty is that to this day you pass for a raving madman on the strength of this fancy. After such an instance of your critical discernment, we need not be surprised to find that your flatterers have inspired you with the further ambition of being taken for a scholar. But I am talking nonsense. The cause of your bibliomania is clear enough. I must have been dozing, or I should have seen it long ago. This is your idea of strategy. You know the emperor's scholarly taste and his respect for culture, and you think it will be worth something to you if he hears of your literary pursuits. Once let your name be mentioned to him as a great buyer and collector of books, and you reckon that your fortune is made. Vile creature! And is the emperor drugged with mandragora that he should hear of this and never know the rest? Your daylight iniquities, your tipplings, your monstrous nightly debauches? Know you not that an emperor has many eyes and many ears? Yet your deeds are such as cannot be concealed from the blind or the deaf. I may tell you at once, as you seem not to know it, that a man's hopes of the imperial favor depend not on his book bills, but on his character and daily life. Are you counting upon Atticus and Callinus, the copyists, to put in a good word for you? Then you are deceived. Those relentless gentlemen propose, with the gods' good leave, to grind you down and reduce you to utter destitution. Come to your senses while there is yet time. Sell your library to some scholar, and whilst you are about it, sell your new house too, and wipe off part of your debt to the slave dealers. You see, you will ride both these hobbies at once. There is the trouble. Besides your expensive books, you must have your superannuated minions. You are insatiable in these pursuits, and you cannot follow both without money. Now observe how precious a thing is counsel. I recommend you to dispense with the superfluous and confine your attention to your other foible. In other words, keep your money for the slave dealers, or your private supplies will run short, and you will be reduced to calling in the services of freemen, who will want every penny you possess. Otherwise, there is nothing to prevent them from telling how your time is spent when you are in liquor. Only the other day I heard some very ugly stories about you, backed to by ocular evidence. The bystanders on that occasion are my witnesses how angry I was on your account. I was in two minds about giving the fellow a thrashing, and the annoying part of it was that he appealed to more than one witness who had had the same experience and told just the same tale. Let this be a warning to you to economize, so that you may be able to have your enjoyments at home in all security. I do not suggest that you should give up these practices. That is quite hopeless. The dog that has gnawed leather once will gnaw leather always. On the other hand, you can easily do without books. Your education is complete. You have nothing more to learn. You have the ancients, as it were, on the tip of your tongue. All history is known to you. You are a master of the choice and management of words. You have got the true Attic vocabulary. The multitude of your books has made a ripe scholar of you. you love flattery, and there is no reason why I should not indulge you as well as another. But I am rather curious on one point. What are your favorite books among so many? Plato? Antisthenes? Archilochus? Hipponax? Or are they passed over in favor of the orators? Do you ever read the speech of Aeschines against Timarchus? All that sort of thing, I suppose, you have by heart. And have you grappled with Aristophanes and Eupolis? Did you ever go through the Baptae? Well then, you must surely have come on some embarrassing home truths in that play. It is difficult to imagine that mind of yours bent upon literary studies and those hands turning over the pages. When do you do your reading? In the daytime or at night? If the former, you must do it when no one is looking. And if the latter, it is done in the midst of more engrossing pursuits. Or do you work it in before your rhetorical outpourings? As you reverence Catuto, venture not again into the paths of literature, have done with books, and keep to your own peculiar business. If you had any sense of shame, to be sure, you would abandon that too. Think of Phaedra's indignant protest against her sex. Darkness is their accomplice, yet they fear not. Fear not the chamber walls, their confidants. But no, you are determined not to be cured. Very well, buy book upon book, shut them safely up, and reap the glory that comes of possession. Only let that be enough. Presume do not touch nor read. Pollute not with that tongue the poetry and eloquence of the ancients. What harm have they ever done to you? All this advice is thrown away, I know that. Shall an Ethiopian change his skin? You will go on buying books that you cannot use, to the amusement of educated men who derive profit not from the price of a book, nor from its handsome appearance, but from the sense and sound of its contents. You think, by the multitude of books, to supply the deficiencies of your education, and to throw dust in our eyes. Did you but know it, you are exactly like the quack doctors who provide themselves with silver cupping glasses, gold-handled lancets, and ivory cases for their instruments. They are quite incapable of using them when the time comes, and have to give place to some properly qualified surgeon who produces a lancet with a keen edge and a rusty handle, and affords immediate relief to the sufferer. Or here's a better parallel. Take the case of the barbers. You will find that the skilled practitioners have just the razor, scissors, and mirror that their work requires. The impostors' razors are numerous, and their mirrors magnificent. However, that does not serve to conceal their incompetence, and the result is most amusing. The average man gets his hair cut by one of their more capable neighbors, and then goes and arranges it before their glasses. That is just what your books are good for, to lend to other people. You are quite incapable of using them yourself. Not that you have ever lent anyone a single volume. True to your dog-in-the-manger principles, you neither eat the corn yourself nor give the horse a chance. There you have my candid opinion about your books. I shall find other opportunities of dealing with your disreputable conduct